Some tips I like to share if you're preparing for a senior manager or a director interview. The first refers to passing screening rounds. I recently had a candidate who prepared a screening round quite intensely. They prepared a proper story bank. They thought they gave the perfect answers during the interview, yet still they failed it. And they asked me, hey Dan, how it's possible that I invested so much time into the screening round, yet still I didn't pass it? And so the first takeaway here is that preparing screening rounds doesn't correlate with success. It's not as if the more you prepare them, the more likely you are to pass these. The best you can hope if you prepare to interview well is that they will appreciate that and they will invite you for subsequent opportunities in case that the opportunity you're presented with is not the best fit. Screening rounds are nothing more than conversations to determine if you might be a good fit for the opportunity. This is why so many candidates pass screening rounds based on referrals and connections. This brings me to my second advice here is one of the main challenges I have with people preparing for final interview rounds for senior manager and director level roles is to convince them that if they passed the screening rounds based on connections and referrals, this will no longer fly for passing final interview rounds. So long story short, it does pay off if you prepare, even if you over-prepare final interview rounds, because the levels of success from passing screening and final interview rounds are quite different. People who work in FANGs know this quite well. It's oftentimes with people with a non-FANG background trying to get into a FANG that I have to convince them that, hey, you know what, it's not going to be just a formality like the screening round was. My third piece of advice here would be with respect to advice. I once had a candidate preparing for a senior manager role with NVIDIA, and they went all the way to round number 10 or 12, anyway, very far in the process, and they were preparing to interview with a VP. And in order to optimize their chances of success, they thought it would be a great idea to ask their recruiter, hey recruiter, what should I prepare for this round? And the recruiter, as goodwill advised, they thought, hey, you know what, you should prepare whatever your subject matter expertise is. Even, you should watch a few of NVIDIA's latest conferences, and you should expect, a proper grilling on your subject matter expertise. And then the interview with the VP was 100% behavioral, that is non-technical. Okay, so the takeaway here from this story would be that not to overthink or read too much between the lines of advice that you're provided with, especially if you're asking for it, so to speak, because you cannot expect a recruiter or anyone else to be 100% accurate on the type of interview that you're expecting, whether it's going to be technical or behavior, even if they're looking for a hands-on or hands-off type of role. Oftentimes, these things are not well known by external people. Recruiters often don't know as much as you think they do about these roles. Okay, so long story short, do not put too much faith in external advice and try to be very selective with these things. Advice number 4. These interviews with high-performing companies, especially nowadays, they tend to be quite stressful. So my advice to you would be to keep an eye on your level of positivity. Because what I noticed here with a good number of candidates, when the pressure is the highest, when 1 week before their final interview rounds begin, they tend to go on a negative slope with things such as, well, you know what, they only hire their friends, they only like hiring the people that they previously worked with in other companies, or I've heard some very bad stories about roles working for these organizations, such as they take advantage of you, so to speak, as much as possible. Anyway, these negative way of thinking will not play to your advantage, and this is extremely relevant, especially nowadays when hiring cycles have become significantly longer, that you maintain, your composure and you maintain a positive attitude towards these processes, because that will also motivate you to perform significantly better during these job interviews, and of course to prepare them as well. Tip number 5, with respect to story banks. So I often say that 95% of candidates fail to build a story bank that's good enough by their own standards. Well, for senior manager and director level roles, this is not true. Okay, so far more people do actually end up with a story bank. However, in my experience, there's a tendency for story banks of senior managers and directors to be too technical. Okay, so for instance, I once had a senior manager of procurement. 95% of their stories, like almost with one exception, contain a cost-cutting as a measure, a cost-cutting measure. I do understand this subject matter expertise in procurement, and this is one of your key selling points. But from here to only have stories around cost-cutting because you are in procurement, this is, I believe, an exaggeration. So my advice to you would be to think something on the lines of, yes, your subject matter expertise and your qualification is extremely important, but your soft skills and your behavioral interviewing skills matter quite a lot. And even with companies such as NVIDIA, even for purely technical roles, up to half of those interviews are purely behavioral. It's a long story short, be prepared both on the technical and on non-technical side of things, because they both will get tested. And maybe as a closing note here, I found extremely useful advice to many of my clients to record your interviews. Because what happens is if you want to get the best value from those interviews afterwards and you want to understand exactly how it went, keeping notes might not be enough to remember all the details. If you record these interviews, not only you'll be able to get back and refer back to them and re-listen to them by yourself, but if you don't understand why you failed them, you can also ask for advice from someone else as to what might have been wrong. Okay, a post-mortem is also valuable advice. So I hope you found these tips useful, and thank you very much for watching.